"I didn't steal a damn thing," she snapped, eyes flashing. "That's a lie and you know it." The courtroom lights poured harsh over her face, picking every new line etched there by fear. Her hands trembled on the plastic tabletop. "Go ahead, play your recording, see if I care," she shifted, voice rising. "You want to drag every skeleton into the light? Fine, let's see which of us survives it." For a moment the room hung silent, airtight as a drum. "I have every document ready, Maureen," someone replied, steady, relentless. "You can keep denying, but it's all here." Papers slid across the table, static electricity crackling. "One last chance." The defendant swallowed, gaze darting from bailiff to judge to the small, gathered crowd. "You're bluffing," she whispered. Somewhere in the back, a suitcase handle clicked open. But how did it ever come to this? A family war exploding under courthouse fluorescence, old debts and buried bones finally unearthed. To understand how it began, you have to return to the first day Nora and her daughter pulled up to the ruins, 1 month before midnight struck on their last chance. The rain had been needling down for hours by the time Nora jammed the ancient Subaru into park. Her knuckles ached from the drive, blood sluggish with fatigue. $342 left to her name, a pharmacy bill sitting in her glove compartment unopened. Cassidy reached into the back, fished out her inhaler, and gave the rearview ghost town a skeptical sweep. "You sure this is it, Mom?" "It's the right address," Nora muttered, stuffing her chapped hands under her arms, breath fogging the windshield even with the heater on high. "Would have been nice to have, a house not falling off a cliff." The legal notice was clipped to the dash: county tax forfeiture, 30 days left to do something or lose everything for good. Cassidy exhaled, a slow judder. "Joke's on them. If it wasn't you, it was going to get boarded up anyway. Who leaves someone a wreck?" Nora's jaw tightened. All the letters her Uncle Thomas's wife, Maureen, had sent, formal, brisk, never affectionate, now made sense. This was a throwaway, a joke, or a calculated humiliation. Still, Nora refused to give up. Even with her lupus swelling her joints, even with Cassidy looking at her as if the idea of inheriting a family curse was one step too cruel. "Look," Cassidy murmured, pointing with the letter still in her fist. The paper felt greasy, corners damp. "There's something scribbled on the back." Nora craned in, squinting through rain-blurred glass. The handwriting, rough and angular: "Front porch, north corner, lift the 6th board." Her heart skipped. Not a joke, not quite. She gripped Cassidy's elbow harder than she meant. "We're looking for a board that opens." If you've ever had to squeeze hope out of a place everyone else laughed at, this story is for you. The first day we learned just how much ruin can hide. Never mind the mouthy locals in town, the diner waitress with her pinched smile and the old men who muttered, "Should have left it to rot." None of them saw what Nora did. 5 caved-in buildings, but something, maybe spite, maybe insanity, made her sure there was something more. The porch boards groaned beneath their boots, every breath filled with wet timber and maple rot. Nora counted out loud, eyes darting for clues. 1, 2, 3, hold on, here's the 6th. Cassidy knelt, prying at a sliver. It shifted with unnatural ease. "Help me with this," her daughter whispered. Together they lifted the splintered length. Underneath, a hollow. Impossible, the gap was too perfectly square, like someone had measured, cut, and concealed on purpose. Cassidy reached inside, fingers brushing cold metal. A key wrapped in wax paper, initials scratched into the cap. "GR." Nora closed aching fists around it. "We're not finished here," she whispered to herself. They returned to the Subaru only as the sky darkened, rain battering new bruises into the roof. "Try to get some sleep," Nora said, voice thin. "Tomorrow we see where this key fits." The next morning dawned pewter gray, fog sheathing the ghost town so thick Nora barely saw her breath. Cassidy passed her a thermos of instant coffee. "You want a bail, now's the time," Cassidy offered, but not with conviction. "No," Nora's answer was flat. "We use the key." The two trudged to the porch again, boots squelching in mud. The wooden slats felt treacherous under Nora's feet, but at the north side, nearly hidden by maple saplings breaking through the foundation, she saw a crude lock sunk into a side hatch. Cassidy watched, brows furrowed. This part wasn't in the lawyer's file, right? "It wasn't in any file," Nora said, sweating as she fit the key. She glanced sideways. Cassidy's face gave nothing away, lips tight, inhaler poised in one hand. The lock twisted open with a metallic groan. Nora braced herself, and together they lifted the hatch. Dust from decades rushed out, a smell of decay, animal musk, faint oil. Stairs descending into a dark unknown. Well, Cassidy coughed, that's horror movie material right there. Nora swallowed, legs taking the first uncertain steps. Every groan in her bones felt like a warning. Cassidy hesitated, then followed. Lights danced in the beam of Nora's phone. At the bottom, an earthen passage beneath the crumbling house. Along one wall, the stacked skeletons of wooden crates, most caved or rotted. Cassidy rapped her knuckles on the nearest crate, hollow, splinters beneath her nails. At the far end, a second padlock rusted near shut. The key scraped, resisted, then snapped open. Cassidy bent down. Mom. She pointed, barely visible, glinting in the weak light, a fossil. Not just bone, but nearly the outline of a prehistoric skull, snout, teeth, vertebrae hugging sediment. Dozens more spread beneath centuries of dust and debris. Nora gasped, Is that what I think? Cassidy released a single, incredulous laugh. That's a dinosaur, Mom, an entire one. The air hung heavy with possibilities. Nora's pulse pounded in her throat. Cassidy wiped her face, smeared with dirt. This has to mean something, right? Nora picked up a length of petrified bone, fingertips trembling. The texture, heavy and cold, sent shivers up her arm. Cassidy pulled her phone from her jacket. I'm calling Dr. Polk at UVM right now. Nora reached out, stopping her daughter. Not yet, we might need to be careful. Someone hid this for a reason. Cassidy's frown deepened, but she tucked her phone away. Nora collapsed onto one of the crates, clutching the fossil as the implications reeled. The ruin wasn't just worthless. It was the front for a secret so valuable, so dangerous, that people had risked everything to protect it. The storm outside battered the abandoned homestead. Inside, two women held the past and maybe the future in their hands. Let's get some air, Nora said softly, and wash our hands, we'll process upstairs. They climbed, bones stiff with exertion, Cassidy casting jittery glances back toward the hidden fossils. Neither noticed at first the folder wedged under the first loose board of the porch, until the next morning when a strong wind flipped it out and Cassidy, half asleep, caught sight. Inside, a letter in a trembling hand, ink faded but legible. If you're reading this, then the time has come. Fighting with the nausea riding her immune system, Nora spread out the letter, heart pounding. Cassidy read aloud. To my granddaughter. If you have found this place, it means you are braver than I was. There are secrets here. Use them not for greed, but to right what was wrong. There is a ledger hidden where the bedrock shows its bones. Trust only those who bleed for you. You must never trust the one who signs her name M.E.D. She will not stop until all is lost. All my love, your grandfather, Gordon Riley. Cassidy let the air out between her teeth. That's Uncle Thomas's wife, Maureen Elizabeth Dorsey. Nora's hands shook for an entirely new reason now. They scanned every nook of the porch, then the warped rooms inside, boots echoing in what passed for a parlor. Cassidy stopped by a split floorboard, knelt, ran her hands over the grain until she found a nearly imperceptible notch. A thin lath came free, but underneath not cash but a pocket-sized ledger. The pages were cramped, dotted with numbers, account codes, hospital bills, and most damning, an index of trust withdrawals dating back over 20 years. Cassidy read, breath-catching, why would she take so much? This isn't just, this is millions, Mom. Nora pinched the bridge of her nose. We can prove she siphoned off everything. And that she used Granddad's death as cover, Cassidy whispered, voice like gravel. But it'll be her word against ours unless someone else steps up. Nora clutched the ledger close. Somebody had trusted her, 20 years late or just in time. We need an expert, Nora said, resolve sharpening. Someone outside the family. Cassidy nodded, tension riding her shoulders. Not a lawyer in town will touch this, but Dr. Polk will. She owes you a favor, doesn't she? She does, Nora agreed. She dialed, trying not to let her hand shake too obviously. When the forensic paleontologist at Vermont's University picked up, Nora launched straight in, voice trimmed to pure urgency. Dr. Polk, you remember my grandfather's property, the ghost town outside Bennington? You won't believe what we found. I need you to come as quick as you can. On the other end, skepticism. That's a haul, Nora. Fossils aren't catnip for county lawyers. Unless, what have you got? Dr. Polk fired questions fast: site location, possible authenticity, condition. Nora answered, hedging, until Polk said, if you're right, this could go national, days, not weeks. Meet me at my office, bring proof. Cassidy's mouth pursed. Mom, we have 30 days. If she doesn't believe us, we lose it all. Nora tried to smile. She'll believe us. Within hours, they were back in town, the ledger and a hastily snapped photo of the fossil hidden in Nora's battered briefcase. Outside Dr. Polk's cluttered office, bristling with geological maps, ammonites, jars of rock core samples, the anxiety doubled. Cassidy pressed her nose to the cold glass. You ready? Ready as I can be. Polk met them in the lobby, arms folded. Show me something I can't explain. Nora handed over the ledger and the fossil fragment. Polk's eyes widened. That's bone, all right, carnivore, late Cretaceous. Impossible to fake. And these numbers, she ran a finger along the ledger. If this is true, whoever owns this land never needed to work again. Polk's tone was low, Flinty. You said 30 days. Less than that, Nora replied. The paleontologist's lips pursed in admiration, but also dread. If what's in this book is what it looks like, you'll overturn more than a few rocks. You run with this, you could blow open a network, academic, financial, you name it. Cassidy, watching the swirling snow outside, spoke up. Do we tell the authorities now, or wait? Polk considered. You need to secure the find first, and be prepared, the blowback is going to be vicious. Nora pocketed the ledger. We don't have the time to play safe. Then you'll need a public record, Polk suggested, voice dropping. Release what you know online, make it viral, force an investigation. I don't know how to make things viral, Nora snapped, more fear than irritation lacing her words. Cassidy's mouth twisted. I do, TikTok, YouTube, podcast, you name it. Polk's eyes sparkled just for a moment. Then hurry, because once Maureen learns you're onto her. That was all the warning they ever had. Nora and Cassidy left, pressed into the biting wind, the ledger digging into Nora's bruised side. The next day, as they prepped to record, Nora's phone pinged. A private number, a voicemail. Maureen's voice, as cold as the wind whipping through the ghost town. You're making a mistake, Nora. Some things don't belong in the daylight. Walk away or you'll regret it. Cassidy listened, brow creased, then grabbed the phone away. She's scared, she hissed, voice triumphant. She knows we've got her. Nora pressed the record button. New rule, document everything from here on out. Blood beating loud and unsteady, they walked back to the ruined property, intent on gathering every scrap. Pictures, video, the original letter, the hatch in the porch. At the porch, Nora paused. Something was wrong. The padlock gone, the hatch ajar. Cassidy panicked, dove inside. When Nora found her, Cassidy was shaking, clutching the fossil fragment that had been moved. On the ground, footprints, too new to be old, pointing toward the woods. They've been here, Cassidy whispered. She's not just waiting for a court case, she's trying to wipe everything away. Nora scanned the woods, swallowing hard. We have to go bigger, tell the world, get this all out before we lose the chance. Cassidy, still crouched, muttered, so we do it tonight. They huddled that night over a battered laptop, Nora coughing as her immune system flared up, pain blossoming in her joints. Cassidy ran tech, microphones, lights, background. Nora read the letter aloud, voice cracking as she hit her grandfather's words. If you have found this. Emotion, honesty, and evidence spread across their kitchen table in the cottage. They filmed everything. Fossils, ledgers, photographs, the story of financial theft, and a hidden paleo site more valuable than a vein of gold. They didn't sleep that night. By dawn the next morning, their podcast episode title, The Dinosaur in the Ghost Town, Our Family's Secrets, had cracked 10,000 downloads. Cassidy's TikTok sizzled, #BetrayalBones trending. The YouTube video glimmered at the top of local news feeds. By midday, they were fielding calls from local journalists, a lawyer from Montpelier, and a lone, terse email, Maureen herself. "You don't know what you've started. Stop this now." Nora's hands shook as she typed back. "Every document is out there already. If you think you can bully us now, try it." At noon that day, the county assessor's office rang. "Miss Riley, may we schedule a site visit? You've opened a can of worms here." The voice was as dry as a matchstick. It escalated fast. Civil authorities swooped in, fossil experts arrived, and forensic accountants pored over pages of withdrawals, shell company filings. Cash funneled through a trail that ended unmistakably at Maureen's boutique business, a Vermont bed and breakfast she'd said she built from scratch. But confrontation, when it finally arrived, was less a duel, more a storm. The judge's office, county courthouse, was thick with tension as Nora and Cassidy, now flanked by their expertise and social media heat, stepped inside. Maureen, just as beaked and brittle as ever, was waiting. The hush fell as Nora laid out document after document. Every transaction, every falsified signature, every piece of leverage. Cassidy's voice, brittle with rage she'd never learned to hide, cut across the room. "You thought no one would ever check." Maureen's nostrils flared. "I did what I had to. That money, it wasn't hurting anyone. My business was dying." "You stole from your own family," Nora whispered, exhaustion making her voice ragged, "and tried to erase the only thing of value left to us." Maureen straightened, composure breaking. "So you'll drag every skeleton out, play God with our lives now." Nora leaned in, glare steady. "I have every document ready, Maureen. You can keep denying, but it's all here." Maureen spit out, "You're bluffing." Cassidy stared her down, eyes burning. "Are we?" The judge's gravelly voice interrupted. "Is there anything else?" Cassidy twisted open her battered suitcase, produced a worn spiral notebook, and slapped the fossil photo on top. The room brimmed with whispers. Maureen's resolve cracked. "This is extortion," she hissed. "No, Maureen, this is closure," Nora replied, her voice low. "If you have anything left to say, now's the time." Court officers closed in as the judge announced. "The evidence is overwhelming. Civil penalty. All assets to be frozen, preliminary injunction. The fossils, as scientific interest, remain in trust under the state's purview until further order. Mrs. Dorsey, your history of financial malfeasance will be investigated forthwith." Maureen slumped, hands trembling, her face colorless. Cassidy pressed record on her phone again, narrator to the end. "This is what it looks like when the past finally catches up." Outside the stuffy hearing room, a crowd of journalists waited. Reporters beat out questions faster than Nora could answer. "How long did you know? Were you scared? Is it true about the fossils?" Nora kept her answers short, voice hoarse. "We were scared, but truth wins eventually." Cassidy squeezed her hand as news vans lined up. Inside the town, the news spread like fire. Maureen lost everything. The B&B shuttered, contents sold. The state seized her accounts, home, even the car. All that remained was public apology, broadcast live across every Vermont news channel. The fossils remained under state lock, but it was Nora who, with newfound respect from the community, steered the recovery team. Now, weeks later, the ruins had transformed. Scientists in yellow slickers covered the bones. A brand new library took shape on the edge of town, its windows gleaming with cataloged fossils and family photographs. Cassidy ran workshops for local kids, teaching them the importance of bones, stories, and honesty. Nora at last felt her hands open without ache. She poured her settlement into the community, a new town center, a scholarship for girls in science, an outreach fund for families left voiceless. People no longer whispered, "Should have left it to rot." They greeted Nora and Cassidy with nods of respect, grateful for the new heart at the ghost town's center. Sometimes the places everyone else writes off hide the greatest power, not because of what's buried under their floors, but because of who decides to stand back up. If you've ever wanted to turn a grim inheritance into something that truly endures, remember, what you build from ashes can light more lives than you ever imagined. And with every new story unearthed, every false floorboard lifted, hope can finally, at last, breathe free. The night after the final ruling came down, Nora lay awake in the unfamiliar hush of the cottage. For so many months, dread and adrenaline had stuffed every corner of her being. Now, with Maureen's empire toppled and decades-old secrets finally exhumed, the silence was as dizzying as victory. Cassidy crept into her room around midnight, cradling a mug of cocoa. "You asleep?" "Not anymore," Nora murmured, shifting in the creaky bed. She stopped keeping a glass of water on the nightstand after the third time she'd knocked it over in a panic. Cassidy perched on the blanket, pulling her knees to her chest. "I keep thinking about that first night, how scared I was." She toyed with a loose thread. "Funny how quickly everything changes." Nora stared at the whorls in the ceiling paint. "I wasn't brave, I was just desperate." Cassidy snorted. "That's what bravery is for most people, isn't it? Not some big Hollywood moment." She sipped the cocoa, then set it down. "Did you ever think we'd win?" "I thought we'd lose everything," Nora said softly. The weight of it, a lifetime of fears, debts, the inheritance she'd tried to turn away from needled at her but couldn't quite sting. "But I couldn't let Maureen," she hesitated, feeling the old ache in her chest, rewrite the ending. Cassidy leaned over and hugged her, awkward arms and all. For once, Nora let herself sink into the comfort. The next morning, the sky cleared for the first time all spring. Word had gone out about the estate. The state archaeologists needed help. Dozens of people from town streamed onto the property, kids with clipboards, teachers with folding chairs, curious neighbors craning for a glimpse of the bones. Nora and Cassidy set up a card table under the trellis of the porch, handing out flyers. "Fossil Dig Day. Come learn the town's true past." She watched, quietly amazed, as children who'd once called the place cursed now traded stone shards and Latin names with the same scientists who'd once been university legends in Nora's own college years. One little boy with a gap tooth grin nudged his friend and pointed toward Nora. "She's the one who found the monster bones." Nora laughed when Cassidy shot her a wry smile. Not quite a monster, but close enough. Two reporters loitered at the gate, careful not to trample the flagged grid marking the dig site. One of them, a heavy-set woman with a bright scarf, caught Nora's eye and tilted her head. "Off the record, what's next for you two?" Cassidy didn't hesitate. "Fix the house, build the museum, share the story." Nora nodded, feeling the warmth of her daughter's certainty. "Maybe rest a little," she added. They gave the press a tour of the hidden hatch, showing the now empty crates and the scars left in the earth where ancient vertebrae once pressed together. In the back of the ledger, Dr. Paulk had found not only the siphoned funds but also sketches, pencil drawings of fossil beds, each annotated with Gordon Riley's looping handwriting. "Your grandfather was an amateur paleontologist in secret all these years," Paulk had marveled as she flipped through the pages, pausing with reverence over the labyrinth of coded notes. "I remember him always scribbling in notebooks," Nora said, swallowing. "I thought he was inventing crosswords." Now experts from half a dozen universities vied for invitations to the site. Cassidy, who had once doubted the worth of any inheritance, led scavenger hunts for fossilized leaf imprints around the property. She ran a video call for local high schoolers, her voice confident as she threaded family history with hard science. "It's weird," she confided to Nora one afternoon as the last of the day's volunteers shuffled home. "I always thought I'd get out of here as soon as I could. Now," she glanced over the partially rebuilt porches and the glinting, newly hung windows, "I don't want to leave until we're done." "Maybe not even then," Nora teased gently. Cassidy pretended to glare, but couldn't hide her smile. At dusk, the town council convened a meeting outside, ringed by folding chairs and lemonade stands. The mayor, a stout woman with freckles and a skeptical streak, pounded a gavel on the makeshift table. Motion on the floor to rename the park in honor of Gordon Riley and the women who brought our history back into the daylight. The voice vote came swift and unanimous, carried by the laughter of a crowd that 6 months earlier would have crossed the street rather than meet Nora's eyes. She couldn't remember who started the applause. She only remembered being pulled up front, Cassidy beside her, the mayor grinning as she handed over a plaque. REILY Family Heritage Park. For the courage to remember and reveal. Afterward, Cassidy traced the letters with a fingertip. Think he'd believe it. He left the clues, Nora said quietly. He knew someone would need them. They took the plaque home that night. At the kitchen table, as Nora finished copying the last page of the ledger for the lawyers, Cassidy closed her laptop and said, "I want you to see something." On her phone, a video message played. A shy teenager from the next town over, dark hair in her eyes, clutching a rock. "Hi, Miss Riley. My dad says girls can't be scientists, but after watching your podcast, I applied for STEM camp and I'm going to save my rock collection. Thanks for proving someone like me can make a difference." Cassidy sat quietly as the message looped. "If nothing else happened," she said, blurry-eyed, "that's enough." They spent the next weeks untangling the remainder of Maureen's old legal traps. The court-appointed forensic accountant, a dry, thorough woman with a penchant for chamomile tea, called Nora one morning, voice soft but resolute. "We've traced the funds, Miss Riley. After state fines and restitution, you and your daughter are entitled to a significant portion. There's enough for the renovations and whatever else you might need." Nora just sat, hand clutching the phone, not quite believing the numbers. When Cassidy appeared, Nora could only manage, "It's over, we're free." Cassidy whooped, spun her mother in a startled hug, and immediately started scribbling lists: roofers, construction crews, local food banks to support. "We're going to do this right, Mom," she said earnestly. "Not just for us, for everybody." Construction trucks arrived the next week, engines groaning, their drivers surprised to find 2 women with blueprints and sharp instructions in hand. Windows were replaced, floors rebuilt. Nora, always cautious before, took to wandering the property every evening, savoring the sight of new walls rising where rot once ruled, of children's laughter echoing beneath sun-washed beams. Each night she'd jot down what she saw: maple saplings blooming, neighbors helping neighbors repaint a fence, one of the fossil experts giving a free science talk to anyone within earshot. The summer that followed became a festival of work and gratitude. Old-timers who had once muttered darkly in the diner now stopped by with jars of pickled beets, stories about Nora's grandfather, and apologies, some sheepish, some tearful. The diner waitress, cheeks blazing, pressed a sticky cinnamon bun into Nora's palm one morning. "You showed us," she said, voice thick. "It's about time someone did." The new library's doors opened before September's first chill. The walls glittered with fossil displays and reclaimed family photographs, a patchwork history that belonged to everyone in town now. Cassidy ran science workshops every Saturday. How to tell a riverrock from a fossil, why every bone is a story. At the first meeting, nearly every chair was filled, a few parents lurking at the back, hungry to see what all the fuss was about. There were rough days, there always would be, Nora knew. Her lupus flared less now that anxiety abated, but fatigue caught her sometimes, dropping her in her tracks. Cassidy had panic attacks before each public speaking gig, her inhaler always clutched in hand. Yet they leaned on each other, picked up the slack, and never let the bad moments outweigh all that shone. On the anniversary of opening the hatch, Nora and Cassidy stood side by side on the old porch, now sanded and gleaming. A crowd gathered below. The state paleontology office presented them with a bronze cast of the fossil skull, a token of thanks for preserving the past and protecting the future. Flashbulbs popped. There was cake, speeches, and an off-key rendition of "This Land Is Your Land" by the middle school choir. Afterward, as the evening light pooled orange across the new lawn, Cassidy leaned against the rail, gaze far away. "You did it," she said quietly to her mother. "We both did." Nora slid an arm around her. "No more ghosts," she said. "Only bones, stories, and the people who remember." Cassidy's jaw shook just a little and she blinked hard. You think it'll last? Things built on truth last, Nora answered. Down the hill, the old ruin had vanished, replaced by lights, laughter, and the sound of hope unfolding. Life went on, messy, uproarious, sometimes strange, but it was theirs. The place nobody wanted had become the place no one wanted to leave. And every so often, when Nora walked by the porch at dusk, she'd press her hand to the sixth board, the hatch now marked with a small brass plate. She'd imagine her grandfather, somewhere out there, finally smiling as his secrets brought not shame, but new beginnings. People called it Riley Family Heritage Park now, a sanctuary built not just from the bones beneath their feet, but from the courage to dig for the truth and the stubborn insistence that what is broken can be put right. And every story told there, every child who left with red clay under their nails and dreams of ancient creatures, was proof. The past, when shared bravely, can make a future bright enough for everyone. The secret, Nora found, was never in the treasures themselves. It was in what you risk by bringing them to light. It was in what you do once the doors are open for all to see. That night the cicadas hummed from the trees beyond the mended fence, threading the darkness with their restless chorus. Nora sat on the new front steps, legs tucked beneath her, as Cassidy joined her with 2 chipped mugs of chamomile tea. Cassidy broke the silence first. You know, I think this is the first night I haven't worried about tomorrow. She nudged Nora's shoulder. Feels weird. Nora tried to find words for the strange blend of relief and quiet joy inside her chest. Maybe that's what winning feels like, or just breathing finally. They watched the shadows stretch across the yard, all the places that once felt haunted now gently luminous in the porch light. The 5th grader's model stegosaurus gleamed from the library window. The little plaque on the 6th board winked. Cassidy tilted her head, listening. Sometimes I wonder what Grandpa would say if he saw all this. She took a long sip, steam curling around her face. Maybe he hid those fossils so someone could uncover everything, maybe not just the bones, but the buried truth. Nora squeezed Cassidy's hand. He trusted someone would come, and that they'd be brave enough to face the dark parts along the way. Cassidy smiled, wide and unguarded. We did, didn't we? We did, Nora agreed, her voice barely above the hush of leaves. After a moment, she laughed soft, surprised, like the bubble of a spring surfacing after a long, hard winter. I wasn't sure we would, but I guess sometimes you have to build the life you want, one risk at a time. They sat together, shoulder to shoulder, as headlights curved gently up the lane, a neighbor arriving late, waving as she passed. From the open window of the library came the drifting notes of a child practicing scales on the battered town piano. Tomorrow's fossil day again, Cassidy reminded her, a hint of pride in her voice. You ready for 100 muddy footprints on the porch? Nora grinned. Long as they keep coming, I am. Cassidy leaned, resting her head on Nora's shoulder. For the first time, the old ruin felt entirely theirs, not as a burden but a promise remade. Above them, the stars began to brighten, bold and certain and beautiful, just like dreams unearthed after too much darkness. And inside, hope waited, bones and ledger and all, ready for the next hands who dared to search.